Everybody, it's Michael from Replica Airguns with a Tabletop. I guess you'd call it another revisit. You may be wondering why I've been doing so many revisits lately. Well, to be honest, there haven't been a lot of new products for me to review. So I've been going over some products that are popular or that are of interest, at least to me, to other people. And in this case, we do kind of have a newer product. We have the Sig Sauer ASP MPX .177 caliber, and this is a pellet rifle. And I have the newer version here. This is the Sig MPX here. And then this is my older version. So this one here is literally the same gun. And we'll go over any differences if there really are any. I don't think there really are. But this is the US version. This is the version I got back in 2016 that Sig Sauer sent me. I had to import it or go across the border, pick it up in the US and bring it over. It was a little bit challenging just because of claimed FPS on the box versus what Sig actually was able to get doing their testing. So I had to kind of produce this information and explain all of this to the border agents. There was also a Sig pistol that was in the mix, so that was also confusing. And I was there for a good hour explaining the situation. Eventually, though, I was able to bring these products across the border with me as unregulated firearms, which they were. So we have this new version here, and this is the Canadian version, if you want to call it that. And really all I think that's happening here is there's some different labeling on the box. Even though the FPS is kind of claimed high on the box, it should really be claimed at under 500. The reality is the higher FPS would be using really light grain pellets, probably somewhere under or around 5 grain rather than say an 8 grain pellet. So even going up and over 500 FPS, you're still going to get not enough power or joules or foot-pounds of energy to bring either of these guns up and over and make them a regulated firearm here in Canada requiring a license. So the whole purpose of this video is to see if we can pick out any differences at all other than the color. The packaging is a little bit different. We'll go over that. I will be testing them out. So I think when we test them out, we'll really know if they're the same, if they have the same performance, the same feet per second. Now I have done a bunch of videos back in 2016 for the MPX. I did some accuracy testing. I did attempt to do a chronograph test, but my chronograph wasn't working back in the day. So I essentially just let you know what Sig's feet per second for this gun was claimed at. And that was with their own testing using their own pellets. So I believe they were using their alloy pellets, their match ballistic alloy pellets, and these match precision wad cutter lead pellets. So the grains believe that they quoted was 5.25 grain for the alloy and 8.18 grain for these pellets. At least the pellets they were using were those weights. And so the feet per second average string, I believe they did a string of several shots, and the average string with the 5.25 grain pellets was 505 feet per second versus with the 8.18 grain pellets was 447. So well within Canadian regulations to make these guns unregulated firearms. All right, let's go over some of the basic specifications, and we'll kind of take a quick look around these guns, see if we can point anything out. Take a look at the boxes. Again, one is from 2016 and is the US box, and one is from basically recently, this year, maybe last year, and it's the Canadian version of the packaging. Okay, so here we go. First of all, they're metal and nylon fiber build guns, very similar to the real steel versions. We're going to find metal and plastic parts. These guns weigh in at 7 pounds or 3.3 kilograms, and that's loaded. So that would be with the CO2, and I'll show you that in a bit, and with probably a full mag of 30 pellets. By the way, it does hold 30 rounds in the full-size belt-fed magazine. I'll show you that in a bit. This is a semi-auto with internal blowback system. The blowback essentially just activates the internal hammer. You need to pull the trigger to rotate the magazine, but the friction is pretty low and you can actually fire this gun rather quickly considering it's kind of double action at the end of the day. This gun can hold either 88 or 90 gram CO2 cartridges. It has an 8-inch rifled steel barrel. It has adjustable flip-up front and rear iron sights. And on the Canadian box, it's claimed to be 575 FPS or up to. And again, on the website, we have a claim of 498 FPS. Now the US claimed FPS on the box is 600 FPS. And again, that real world testing produced much lower feet per second, even with light pellets. Even the 5.25 grain alloy pellets were closer to 500 FPS. Now these guns are designed by Sig, but they're made in Japan. So they're not made in the Sig factory, they're made for Sig by an airgun company with a lot of cooperation with Sig, making sure it's just the way they want it to be produced. And if you haven't already noticed, they're really accurate copies of the real steel Sig Sauer MPX rifle. So we're going to look at the cardboard boxes really quickly. I'm going to show you the US version from back in 2016, so it is different. You'll notice here, a lot of it's going to be the same, 30 rounds. It says 88 or 90 gram CO2, synthetic stock integrated Picatinny optical rails and accessory rail, flip up adjustable front and rear sight. It does say on this box, performance tested up to 15,000 rounds. It's something that's kind of cool that Sig does. They really put these guns through the ringer, make sure they're working properly. So you'll see here up to 600 FPS. That's a little different on the box. You have some nice pictures and things, right? And then on the back side, it's going to be kind of a lot of the same, but you're just going to see some parts of the gun highlighted and pointed out and named, just so you can see it. There's really no other information on the back that's really different or relevant. Okay, so let's check out the Canadian box. And I'm a little bit surprised this doesn't say like 499 FPS or whatever, or 98. You'll see here it says 575, and that typically raises alarms at the border. They get all, flustered. Oh my gosh, it's over 500 feet per second. Then you have to explain that the energy is much lower, under 4.2 foot-pounds or 5.7 joules, which brings it back down into that unregulated category. But, there's usually a little bit of an explaining that has to go on. You have to point out their own regulations to them and all that. And then eventually they give in and let you bring these guns in. But it does cause a little bit of a headache at the border. So you can see here a lot of the same stuff. Okay, 30 round magazine, again, up to 575 FPS, so that's a little different. Different pictures. You do have this nice little cutout on the box so you can actually see the gun when it's in there. I'm not going to show you the manuals. They will probably have some different information on them, maybe English and French in the Canadian one, that kind of thing. I did also want to point out, and this is kind of different. Now this is the MCX, so you can see here, MCX. I've got the gun in it. A lot of it's the same, but I wanted to point out on this gun, it says max velocity or muzzle energy 5.7 joules. So that's more in line with our Canadian guidelines. As long as you don't exceed that in Canada, then the air gun won't be regulated. So it's specifically on the box here, which clears things up and makes it a lot easier for import. You don't have any of these alarms go off at the border, and everything's all fine and dandy. Now you might wonder, am I going to test the MCX out and see if there's a difference between the Canadian and the US version? I don't have a US version of that gun because basically it does have the potential of shooting a little bit faster since it has a longer barrel. So the US version could potentially get up and over the FPS or foot-pound or joule energy limits that we have here in Canada. So I never went down that road. I never did get that one from the US and bring it in back in 2016. I stuck with the MPX. So all I have is the Sig MPX Canadian version, and I have done a full review, tabletop, and field test video for that. So you can check out those videos here on the channel if you want to. All right, so let's take a quick look. You're really not going to see any difference here. Everything's the same. The flip-up sights are the same, right? This is just going to be a walk around to kind of show you what the guns look like. They're not different. They don't have a dust cover that opens up at all. The rails are going to be the same, right? You have this little clip here for some sort of a sling if you want to put that on there. The marking should be about the same. It looks the same to me. You have the same safety system. I think the other side might have I don't know if it has, yeah, so you have the red here on this side, but not on this side. So it's interesting. So you don't have a cut of red there, but that's okay. You have your magazine release here. We'll just show the magazine. Okay, so you have this neat belt that you can load up. You basically pull it out and you load it up there, okay? Obviously pull it right out, load it up with pellets. Okay, and pop this in, 30 rounds. It actually has amazingly low friction considering it's a belt-fed magazine that holds 30 rounds. Again, that's the magazine release. The trigger is really quite nice. You can really pull it a lot. That activates the internal hammer, which you can hear it's dropping now. The blowback will move that internal hammer back. As you notice, it drops, but then it doesn't drop the second time. That internal blowback does that for you. You do have the area for the CO2. Okay, so just pop that in there. I'm not going to tighten it at this point. Okay, that does add some weight to the gun for sure. Here's your rear flip-up sight. Okay, and you do have different apertures. So you can get in here, different apertures. Smaller and larger for different types of shooting styles. Again, you have, well, this isn't really gonna, I don't think this even works. This would be a bolt catch type thing, but it's not. This is just for show. Again, you have your safe, and then you have your fire. Okay, you got some Sig engraving here on the gun. Looks nice. More Sig markings. Okay, nice rubber butt pad. More sling mount option areas. So you'll notice it's really not that different. Flash hider. Let's just take a quick look at the other one. I will show you some more information here in a second here, but let's just take a quick look. Okay, so again, really the same markings all around, right? Dropout mag, it's the same magazine, okay? It's the same rails with the same hardware on it, same pop-up sights, same, mounting areas, same flash hider, completely the same system, right? Same buttstock, everything's the same, a rear stock and buttstock, same grips. Okay, so no red on either side, I believe. Oh, you just have the red on the one side. So that's the same, even that's the same. Okay, so really cool. Now there was something else that came in the box I want to show you. Other than the manual, you do get this little tool right here. And this is for seating the pellets. So this helps you seat the pellets in a little bit better. And I believe this one here is for adjusting the sight. I believe the front sight. So you can actually pop it in here and adjust this front sight. So you have windage and elevation. So this will adjust the elevation. And then you can adjust the windage in the rear sight here very easily, okay? So we'll have to make sure those are kind of close. I'm going to just sight them in really quickly when I do my test, just to make sure they're somewhere near the center bullseye when I do that. But other than that, that's kind of what we're going to do. We're going to obviously get these guns tested out on the chronograph and also accuracy. When I did my initial test with the Sig MPX, I found as long as you're using the right pellets that it agrees with, it is fairly accurate. And same goes for the Virtus, which is the 22 caliber PCP version that follows a similar style to the MPX and the MCX in that it has the same style of magazine, probably a lot of the same internals. It's just designed after a slightly different version of Sig's product line. All right, let's get into some of the pros and the cons real quickly here. I gotta say the Sig ASP MPX and MCX line are probably some of the best semi-auto pellet rifle replicas to date, at least in terms of replica guns. And they're near perfect replicas of the real steel Sig Sauer MPX, including licensing and trademarks, of course, because it is distributed by Sig. They have awesome build quality with lots of metal parts, and the nylon parts are true to form and very solid. The gun has been tested by Sig Sauer to shoot over 15,000 rounds without any problems or reliability issues. I like the 30-round full-size belt-fed magazine. It has a super high capacity, and it really does work flawlessly, at least from my experiences. And you're going to get decent FPS performance, about what I would expect from a multi-shot CO2 pellet shooter. And it's totally usable. Anything, in that 400 to 500 FPS, using lead pellets is going to be more than enough for action shooting. It's not a vermin gun. Never really was designed to be used for that. Now the trigger does feel really good. It's not too long or too heavy and very consistent. You can really get a lot of shots off quickly. You're also going to find fully adjustable pop-up front and rear sights. You can take them off if you want. You can leave them on. You could even put a red dot or a scope on there if you want, with all the rail possibilities going on. And again, I found in my previous testing that it's really quite accurate with its 8-inch rifled barrel. All right, let's finish up this video with a few cons. The rear stock is non-adjustable, so hopefully that shoulder position isn't too far or too near for your sight position. It might be a little cramped for larger shooters. And the blowback action does not advance the belt-fed magazine, but it does cock that internal hammer, so it's kind of like a double action trigger, but a fairly light trigger, because all you're really doing when you're pulling that trigger is rotating that internal magazine and then just releasing the hammer. Now getting back to the FPS claim, the high 600 FPS or 575 for the Canadian version, that does seem a bit hopeful even using lighter grain pellets, so that could be a little misleading for some people. All right, thanks for watching another Replica Airguns video. Don't forget to subscribe. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're interested in either the US or Canadian version of these products or other Sig products, we have a whole line of Sig ASP products over in our Canada and US online stores over at replicairguns.ca for Canada and replicairguns.us for the US. Don't forget to check out our other reviews over at replicairguns.com. Got lots of articles and information there for you guys. All right, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.